Hey everyone, thank you so much again for joining us for another one of our Animal Career Day interviews. You guys have been so amazing with keeping and following us. You ask amazing questions and you get out there. It has been so lovely to see. I love seeing the participation that we get. You guys are super smart and I am seeing the love out there. So it has been pretty amazing. If you're just joining us for the first time, my name is Keeper Kylie, and I'm going to be the one guiding you throughout these programs. So thank you so much for joining us. And if you guys have not been out to visit us there at the Lion Habitat Ranch in Vegas, we are open. So we love seeing your bright, shining faces. You guys ask the most amazing questions, and we love seeing you in person. If you're unable to come and visit right now, that's okay. Keep checking back on our Facebook page for the most up-to-date information and photos and videos and Aussie photos and all those cute things. And also feel free to donate if you're unable to come in. Donations right now are a huge help. They help support our animals right now. And even just $5 a day can really help go a long way. You can help feed a bird. You can help feed a tortoise. And that is a really big help for us. So feel free to donate right here on our Facebook page, or you can go and donate online, habitatranch.org. Don't forget, guys, we are going to be posting these videos on our YouTube channel as well. So we know a lot of people do not have Facebook page. So go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube. We're going to go and link that in the show notes here, and you can go and subscribe and follow along, because these interviews are going to continue on for as long as I have people interviewing with me. It's been pretty fun. And you can also go back and see previous interviews. So, all right, guys, let's go ahead and get into it. I'm very excited about this one today. Coming to us from quite a long ways away, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here today. My name is Hannah Spathius. I'm a research scientist, also marine biologist, and I'm currently working in the South Pacific in American Samoa.
Wow, definitely not your next door neighborhood kind of thing. This is something very outside the range of what we've been kind of hearing about. That is pretty amazing. How long have you been where you are?
So currently where I am, I've been here only about 2 years, but before I moved here, I was in the Caribbean for the past 8 years. So I was between Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. I worked around, there's 4 islands in Puerto Rico. So I worked on all of those and doing different research projects around Puerto Rico islands, and then the U.S. Virgin Islands. There's 3 islands there. So I definitely did work in all 3 of those islands. And yeah. And way before that, I started in California.
Awesome. Where are you from originally?
So originally I'm from LA. I was born and raised in LA County, and yeah, so that's home base. Hasn't been home for a while, but that's where I'm originally from and grew up.
Yeah, remember guys, when it comes to working in the environment, a lot of these jobs do take you quite a bit away from home. So it is one of those things where you probably should start understanding now that it might be some amazing locations, but getting home to see the family might be a little bit harder. So it's one of those perks and also one of the sacrifices in this field, that you are amazingly lucky enough to go and see beautiful locations and work with them and protect them and help with those environments. But Christmases are going to be a little bit different than most people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's one thing I have to say. I'm very grateful that throughout my career, my work has allowed me, I've been to Barrow, Alaska, the northernmost point in the US. I've been to the easternmost point in St. Croix. I've been around the Caribbean on other country islands, not just the US Caribbean. And also here in the South Pacific now, getting to like remote atolls that, you never would have the opportunity unless you're a scientist or a researcher or going there for a purpose to do work, right? Not just for vacation or leisure. It's not open to the public. So that's definitely one of the very cool perks about being in the marine science field. I'm sure doing terrestrial stuff, you get, similar exposures of going to remote places and seeing really cool things. And yeah, it's an exciting part of the job for sure.
Yes, the world is a huge place, guys, and this field, this is a great opportunity to get to experience it. So awesome and highly recommended. So what kind of education and certification, so not only school wise, but outside in different certifications, do you think that you really should focus on if you want to get into something like what you're doing?
Yeah, so primarily I like to scuba dive a lot. So if you like the marine environment and you want to be in the water, either doing snorkeling or scuba, I definitely recommend getting your scuba certification. If you live in a state that's landlocked, it's okay. You can still get scuba certified in a pool. You can do your dives in a quarry, a lake, a river. So don't rule it out if you don't live by the coast. It's okay. You can still do it. You can also do some other good certifications to do if you're end up being a field biologist, whether studying animals on the land, terrestrial, or in the ocean, or in some sort of water marine environment. You can always use like first aid, CPR. Those are also always good certifications. They're just safety things that you need to know. It's not the main part of your job, obviously, but you need the knowledge to know just in case. Another thing for marine biology, you're on boats a lot, right? So if you're scuba diving, you're usually on boats. So getting any sort of experience being on boats. For example, I have my U.S. Coast Guard Master's Captain license. And so that was something that I had gotten on my own outside of work, but I did it to kind of make me more competitive in the field. And that helps me, right? So now I can drive a vessel when we're doing research projects. I can drive the research boat, and I can also be a diver and things like that. So let's see, what else is there that you could do?
Do you have a master's or do you have a bachelor's?
Yeah, so I have a bachelor's, I have a BS in oceanography, and then I did my master's. I got an MS in marine sciences. And when you're, I guess, starting off like in school, one thing I highly encourage is internships. So for me as an undergraduate, I went to Humboldt State University in Northern California. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Okay, I was 17, had no idea, but I knew I loved the ocean. So I thought, well, maybe I want to do marine biology, but I don't know if I wanted to really do biology and study animals. I wasn't sure, but I like the ocean. So I did oceanography because it was very broad. I could have gone into like geology, geological oceanography, or chemistry of the ocean, all these different branches. And so through internships, and that's one other thing I recommend for all of you kids, is you can volunteer at places, like volunteer at the local aquarium or the zoo, and you can kind of get some hands-on experience. And so I did internships when I was an undergrad, and that's what really helped me figure out what I wanted to do. And I applied to some, and that's actually what took me to the Caribbean, was an amazing internship opportunity I had with NOAA as an undergraduate. And that's when I discovered that my true passion was marine restoration and conservation work, specifically with corals, specifically with that animal. But in general, that's where my passion is. So yeah, let's see what other, I would just, encourage, volunteer, and try to just get your hands into anything that you can of what you think you might be interested in. And yeah, like a simple example for me was marine. So I was like, okay, I'll, go volunteer at the local aquarium or marine lab and just get some experience and kind of shadow somebody working there. And it helps you kind of hone in on if you like it or not, and you learn new things, and you network, and you meet people, and you talk to people and hear what they did, so then it gives you more ideas of, oh, well, they just mentioned this, maybe that's what I want to do. That sounds really awesome and really cool. So yeah.
Yes, networking is really a big thing in this field, and it does help you to kind of broaden your ideas. Because, guys, you don't have to know what you want to do, because you might not know that it exists. But if you know what you like and what you want to do, if you like, if you like going to the lake every weekend and hanging out with your family on a boat, you can get paid for that. There are jobs out there. What those jobs might be, maybe it is working for the Coast Guard, but maybe it is doing something that involves protecting the environment. So there are ways where you can figure out what you like. That's why we want to do these interviews. We want to go and show you that there's a huge world out there. And if you like to do something, chances are you can get paid for it. And that's pretty awesome in the long run.
Better to do something that's super fun and you enjoy, and then it's not like work, right? You're doing something you enjoy and you happen to get paid for it. So it makes it that much better. You don't have to find another job that you don't like.
Right. So let's talk about what you are specifically doing now. What does your job entail in the broad spectrum? What are you doing?
So for my current position, the main focus, I'm working for a government agency that helps protect and conserve the marine environment. So we have, like everyone I'm sure has heard of marine protected areas. So that's basically what we do, and we have our own designated marine protected areas per se. And so in these areas, we're studying the marine life in them and how they're doing over time with climate change and everything, and then human influences like pollution and stuff. And so on the daily, we're doing research projects geared to continue to conserve this pristine marine environment. So some of that includes doing like a coral reef monitoring program. So for that, we'll go scuba diving, we have transects, and we survey the coral reef. So we look at what species of fish are on the reef, what types of corals are on the reef, what their health status is. Do they have diseases? Are they bleached? How big are they? Things like that. So we're looking at the overall health of the reef as a whole, right? So we put all these pieces together. Another thing we're doing is we have an ocean acidification project, and that entails collecting on the ground water samples to ground truth the data that the buoy's collecting, that's sending it via satellite to the head office in the mainland. And another project we're doing right now too is we have what's called an ecological acoustic recorder, and this allows us to record the sounds of the reef. So believe it or not, when you go onto a coral reef or even like say a kelp forest, us humans, when we scuba dive or snorkel, we may not hear all the critters, but oh man, there's a lot of noises going on. So one of our projects is deploying this what we call ecological recorder, and it records all those sounds, so we can get an idea of what the density. You can use it to get an idea of density of a specific species of fish. Each fish or each animal has a unique sound, so we can study these sounds and we can get a better idea. Because when you scuba dive or snorkel, for example, with fish, right, that can move, they're skittish. And if you're swimming, they get scared and they move away, right? But when nobody's in the water, what are all the animals that are there? Well, sometimes we don't know because we make noises. So by having this acoustic recorder, then we can get a sneak peek and see what's there when nobody's physically there, no person. So that's something that's really cool. Another thing we do work with schools, local schools and kids, and we do education outreach stuff. Occasionally I get to go I just went actually last summer on a huge research expedition, and we went around the South Pacific, specifically here in American Samoa. So there's 7 different islands. And so we got to study the deep sea environments of these different atolls and islands, which was very exciting because we're so remote. A lot of the area here has never been studied or explored. So it was the first time that humans have seen what is in this area of the world. So that's something that was super exciting. And again, all of this research and projects that we're doing, it's all so that we can make better management decisions on how to continue to preserve these pristine environments that are still pristine as of today, right? There's some effects of climate change that have started to appear, but it's very minimal. And a lot of that has to do with the low population of people living here, and the fact that, we're surrounded by oceans. So it's not like there's other large islands or other large land masses with high populations of people there. So it's a really awesome position I'm in right now, being, kind of I guess we're kind of pioneering things per se, because a lot of people in today's world that are like of our age, right, the newer scientists in the field, if you go to the Caribbean where I lived, the reefs aren't as healthy. And in my lifetime, in my professional career, I never saw what it looked like. I never knew what a healthy reef looked like. And then here I come to the remote South Pacific, and I'm just blown away at how many corals there are and how many fish. And I'm like, wow, this is what the Caribbean used to look like, So it's super exciting to be working with an organization that's its goal is to continue to preserve it so it doesn't decline like other places as we get into the future, because we know what stressors there are and things like that.
Guys, we've talked about this before. Things can turn bad very, very quickly. It is easy to lose species. And don't forget, corals are animals. They're not rocks. They're not plants. That can be hard, especially for us here in Las Vegas. If you guys have never seen corals before, that's my background. I actually started on the aquarium side before coming over to lions. So corals have a place in my heart. And they're animals. They need our protections. They are currently on track to be one of the most endangered species as a whole, because we are losing them so fast. And just because you might not see them doesn't mean that they aren't there. And they are important. They are massively, massively important for many different species, for many different things like oxygen. That's kind of important overall. So they're important for us, they're important for the people around us, and they're important for those species. So that's a really, really big deal. And when we lose them, it happens like that. It's so fast, and it can take decades to get it back to where it should be. So we want to stop it from happening first. And that's why what the work is so vital, because it's happening very, very fast, but hopefully we can get in there and protect it. What is considered deep sea, by the way? Where is that level when you say if you go to a deep sea area, what's that cutoff?
So in the shallow, you have the shallow reef, and then the next, I guess, the first kind of deep level would start at about 150 meters. So that's, let's see, like say maybe about 400 feet-ish or so. So that's about the cutoff for the mesophotic zone. So the mesophotic is 30 to 150 meters. And then past that, then you get more into the deep sea. And that's where you have no light. So you don't have any corals. You have some corals. There are some species of coral, soft and hard scleractinian corals, but they don't use zooxanthellae, which is an algae that they get a lot of their food from, because those algae photosynthesize. So once you get into the deep, so past 150 meters, that's when you basically lose light. There may still be a little light, but like deep, deep sea, for like some of the research we were doing on the expeditions we were doing here that I just mentioned earlier, those we were doing dives up to 3,000 meters. So it was pretty deep. We were doing between 1,000 and 3,000 meters. Yeah. So super deep. Yeah. So we were pretty far down. And when you get to a level like that of the ocean and that depth, the types of species you see are very different, because they have to adapt, right? They're under high pressure. They don't have any light. So some of them may not even have eyes. They don't need eyes. It's pitch black. So why do you need to see anything, right? So it's, it's quite interesting to see how funny per se the animals look compared to the shallows to the deep sea.
That is so neat. I love that so much. What does a day in the life tend to look like? Is it mostly paperwork, or are you tend to be a lot more in the field?
So currently at my job now, unfortunately, I'm more in the office, but we do have our field season. And during our field season, say we're out in the field like 3 times a week, maybe. That's that's a lot of field work for my current position. In the past, I've had positions where I'm in the field every single day, 5 days a week, scuba diving every day, doing 2 dives, 4 dives, 6 dives in a day. I mean, we would just be out on the boat and surveying the reefs and kind of bouncing around to different dive sites. I also worked and did a lot of coral restoration in the Caribbean. And so in doing that, sometimes we'd be on land if you had to like build the structures or enter data, right? You always have to enter data, or if you're analyzing it or typing reports. But I love to do the field work. And so I always try to get a position where I have more field work. And so obviously there's times, you have to, prep your field gear and clean it up afterwards. But yeah, the fun stuff is in the field. But day to day, like I said, we do have to do office stuff, whether that's just coordinating and organizing for the next field day, or if that's, we have to order supplies and equipment, or if we're applying for a grant, or if we have to submit a report to the funding agency that we got funding for our project. So it varies. It depends. Where I'm located now, there's definitely a field season. So during the off season, that's when we focus on all our like data analysis and data entry. And so we'll do everything that we need to get done in the office then. And then during the field season, we're hardly in the office and we're always in the field. And that's my favorite time because I like to be outside. Yeah, so it just depends. And then obviously, you know, some days you kind of have a mix. Sometimes you might just do a half day in the field. It might be something quick like water sampling only takes a half a day. So we might spend the morning in the office and then the second half in the field. So it varies. It definitely just varies. But I would say overall, it's more or less almost kind of a 50-50. I mean, it depends, but yeah, there's a happy medium, because I'll tell you, if I had an office job, I wouldn't do the job. So I like to have the field. I like to have the field aspect. Like I said, whether if it's only a couple days a week, or if it's a half day, or if it's every day, which is my favorite. But yeah, so that's the general day, I guess. It's flexible and it changes all the time, which is also something fun about this field, is that you're never doing the same thing repetitively over and over and over again, right? And so, and even when you go in the field to do something that maybe you've done 10 times already, I mean, there might be something new that pops up, or you might see some whales or some dolphins, and that's like a nice surprise in your work day, you know? So keeps it exciting.
Definitely a better office view than most people. But going back to that, guys, data is something that is still really, really important. So it does go back to a lot of what school, and that's why schools tend to be more important. School, while the specific degrees might not be as important, what you're going to learn in school is data entry. It's going to teach you how to learn. That's one of the biggest things in this field, is you have to learn how to learn, because a lot of times you might have to go and access other research papers to go and understand what previous research has stated. So sometimes that paperwork might not be super fun and exciting, but it makes a difference. That's why it's so important long term, because that data that's being collected, that's being sent out, is hopefully going to end up on the desks of important people who can make laws to protect it, who can make laws to go and change things, who can go and talk about how we need to go and readjust what we do every day. And so that's why this data is so vital, and every little number counts, every little decimal point counts, and you will learn how to do that in school. So it might seem a little bit overwhelming, but and especially if you're doing internships in college, or you're doing lab work in college too, that will really help you with that. Hardest question for everyone out there. What is your favorite animal?
My favorite animal, so when I was a kid, it was a dolphin, but now that I'm a biologist, marine biologist, and my specialty is coral, coral is my favorite animal. I also
do you have a specific coral though?
So here where I live now, there's a lot of different species. And I don't know if I pinpointed a favorite one here, but in the Caribbean, Copophilia is a genus, and Nathan's was one of the species, and it's the largest brain coral in the Caribbean, and that was always one of my favorite ones. Or Montastria cavernosa, which is also known commonly as a star-cup coral. Those were always really pretty to look at too. Yeah.
What is something about your job that nobody would expect?
Something that nobody would expect about like my current position on the daily.
Yeah. When you tell somebody, they're like, you do what?
So something you wouldn't expect, I guess, is sometimes you have to do admin stuff. So depending on what agency or organization you're working for, a simple example, something I'm currently working on right now, is we're buying supplies for an upcoming coral nursery project. And so I'm looking up different vendors and having to gather quotes, because we have a process, a step-by-step process that we have to follow for upper management. So I can't just go to the store or go online and buy this material that I need. I have to go through a series of steps of approval and whatnot. So that's something that maybe you wouldn't expect to be doing as a scientist. I want to do the research and study the animals and collect the data, well, sometimes in addition to that, you have to do other things like buy the field supplies. And let's see, what's another one that might be unexpected? Sometimes you're required to do additional safety things per se, I guess, that you normally wouldn't do, like maybe some extra trainings and things like that may come up. If you're doing, say, like some very remote field work or something, and it entails something that's maybe new for most people, then you'll be required to, say, take a specific safety course in something else. Trying to think like what else would be out of the ordinary. For my current position now, I've definitely done a lot of new things that I hadn't done in the past, and I think that's part of the organization I'm working for now. We have like a science division, an education division, and an outreach division. So I've definitely gotten pulled to do some educational things that I normally per se wouldn't do. And so me as a scientist, we'll do sometimes a lot of technical writing. And so something that's not per se been challenging, but different and having to adjust is how do I turn what our findings are in science and make it easier for the general public to understand, things like that. Another thing that you may not expect is you do presentations on your research and data, right? So as a scientist, you wouldn't think that, you would be someone presenting all the time, but, sometimes you do present a good bit of the time if you're presenting at a conference or at a workshop, and people are going to ask you to share your research. So I was a very shy person when I was younger, and I was not a good public speaker and being shy. But now, as I've gone through my career and I'm maturing in it, I'm perfectly fine and okay with doing public speaking now. So that's something that for me personally, I didn't expect to do coming into this field. I never would have thought, oh, I'm going to have to give presentations to people. I was just thinking, cool, I get to go scuba dive and hang out with all the fish and coral all day. So that was something unexpected. That was a big thing that was unexpected for me. But yeah, I guess the public speaking was maybe like the biggest thing that I never anticipated in doing.
And again, guys, we've talked about this before. If you have a chance to do theater, choir, debate class, and then for some of my older viewers out there, the adults who are kids at heart and watch these videos, I highly recommend Toastmasters courses and clubs. That's a really good one where if you need to go and learn public speaking and you have not had a job where they shove a mic in your face and you suddenly have to talk to 200 people every day, then that's one I really recommend as well. What's a common misconception about your job?
Misconception so I don't like to say I'm a marine biologist. Sometimes I'd rather say a research scientist, because sometimes I feel like if you say I'm a marine biologist, people are like, oh, you just play in the water with animals all day. But it's like, no, like I'm doing research. We're reading papers. We're writing papers also, there's definitely some not so fun stuff, right? Like the office work. And I feel like sometimes people just think you're playing in the water all day, which is not the case. Yes,
you get really familiar with algae too. Like you're not playing with dolphins out there. You're not some mermaid. Look at this algae.
Yeah. So that's definitely, I feel like can be a more common misconception of what we do. Yeah.
What's one of the hardest parts of your job?
One of the hardest parts of my job. I guess if let's see. It's hard, but it's in the name of science, right? So if you're studying a specific species and say it's not so common and it's rare, and you have to induce pain or hurt to it and or kill it, so that can sometimes be hard. But like I said, it's in the name of science and it's to better understand this species and whatnot. So sometimes I guess just for me, it's like, oh, well, I don't want to kill this animal, right? I want to help it, but we're hurting it to help it. I guess if you can think of it that way. Another hard thing about my job, I guess sometimes it can be, when you're doing a lot of field work, it can be very physically demanding. So definitely to stay in good shape, like just, regular daily life choices as me as a person, eating a healthy diet, staying active and exercising outside of work, because there are times when, like, I've had times where, like, one time I dove for like a whole month straight. I was doing 2 to 6 dives every day for 30 days straight. And like, man, you were exhausted, right? So it can be physically demanding at times. It's fun and it's great, but obviously when you're tired, sometimes it can be a little harder, or you're not as excited as if you're just going once a week, right? So that can be hard on your body, I guess, which kind of mentally wears you out because you're physically so tired. And yeah, I think that's all I can really think about. But
Yeah, and to kind of put scuba diving in perspective, guys, it can consume up to 500 calories an hour. You tend to think that you're in this weightless environment, but what you're actually doing is the force of the water is actually slowly moving you. So as you're moving through the water, you're actually pretty contracted through because you are fighting against the force of the water, especially if you have to stay still and take notes and observations. It can actually be really, really hard where you're not moving, but you're just very tense because you're actually fighting against the water. So it's one of those things where if you are not used to something like that, it can drain you very, very fast. So
yeah,
those are definitely
definitely,
something. Yeah. Yeah.
definitely. You will
Um,
build endurance though, because at the end of a 2 week fields, at the end you're not so tired at the end of this one day, whereas in the beginning you were completely. I mean, sometimes I've gone to bed at like 8 o'clock. I'm just so physically worn out, right?
so then finally, what's the favorite part of your job?
My favorite part is being in the water. Scuba diving. I love to scuba dive. I love to free dive. I do it even on my free time when I'm not working, when I don't have to do it, because I love to do it so much. And one of my favorite things about scuba diving is just the beauty of the silence underwater and being able to just observe the marine environment. And I love it. It's so peaceful. And yeah, that is like my favorite part. And when scuba diving, like for example, if I'm surveying corals or assessing corals, it's nice because you really get to check out this animal and see how it's doing. And then and when we're doing monitoring, I can firsthand with my eyes visually just catch and see the differences. Is it dying, and why is it dying, and figuring that out. And then just being able to, when you're in the water and in the field and seeing that marine environment on a regular basis, you're then better able to make observations if something is going wrong, if there's something out of the ordinary, say an invasive algae comes in. And then you'll know, being in the water so often, like, well, this wasn't here before, this is new, this isn't native. Or you're able to see things as they happen and catch them early and right away, right?
Yeah, and the same thing, guys. I've been scuba diving a long time because once you have that scuba certification, you have it for life. So I always recommend, instead of asking for your first car, ask for a scuba certification. It will 100% benefit you in some way because either at the very, very least, you just picked up a really cool hobby. And you can go and see things that very few people in this world can see. And that alone makes it amazing. But it's a good chance that if you do want to go and work in this field, you never know when a scuba certification is going to come in handy, and it really will benefit you. So, and again, once it's done, it's done. You don't have to go and continue it. So ask your parents to go and help with that as soon as you can. And again, you can do it as young as 15, and it's a lifetime benefit. I always recommend people having their scuba certs. Oh my goodness, this has been so full of knowledge, guys. This is a really fun one because this is one of those careers that people tend to think of a bit more when we talk about working with the environment. Research scientists come to mind. And this one is probably one that I don't think you guys have thought of, is scuba research scientists, and how they are out there and how they are working. So this is a really fun career, guys. If you guys like being in the water, if you guys like looking at the ocean and being in there, I promise you, you will learn to appreciate some things. We tend to everybody likes dolphins. Everybody likes whales. I promise you, it's okay to like them, but give it a shot and you'll realize just how much those little ones tend to go and just tug on your heartstrings when you see this whole ecological impact. So getting out there, checking it out, this might be the career option that you're like, yep, this is where I want to go. I want my fingers to be pruny the rest of my life. And yes, that's how it should be. Little pruny fingers. I love it. So yeah, check back later, guys. We are going to be continuing this series for as long as I have people willing to interview with me, which has been just fantastic having people reach out to me. And thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule, especially, again, guys, she is not anywhere close to here. So time differences tend to be a little bit different. So thank you so much for working with me. And is there any last information that if somebody says, I think I might want to do this for a living, what would you want to go and tell that kid?
I would say definitely pursue it, keep trying new things until you find out what you want to do. And I think I mentioned in the beginning, like internships, like once you're in high school, you know, you can start doing internships with different organizations that you think you might be interested. And then when you're in college, you know, you can, obviously there's more internship opportunities. But yeah, doing internships or volunteering or some way to get yourself out there in that potential workforce that you think you're interested in is a really good way to figure out if you like it or not, right? Because when I did an internship, I did one with a physical oceanographer in Barrow, Alaska on a ship. And I was on a ship for 2.5 weeks and having to like live on a ship for 2.5 weeks. Not everybody could do that, right? I didn't mind it. It was okay. But then I was like, this isn't what I really want to do. Like I want to be in the water, like scuba diving or free diving. You know, I don't want to just be on a boat on top of the water, right? But I wouldn't have known that unless I did an internship. And maybe I would have pursued a career working as a researcher on a huge research vessel. And then when I finish and I'm finally get into the field and I think, well, I don't like this. I don't want to do this. But I never would have known if I didn't get any sort of experience prior. So I definitely encourage for you all to get experience. The sooner the better. You're never too young to do it. Even if you're not even in high school or you're in high school, like I said, you can volunteer. You can volunteer and ask, go to, say there's some, I don't know if it's even just like a zoo, like I said before, an aquarium, or say there's a university and they have a marine lab and you could just say, hey, can I shadow you and just see what you do, on your daily tasks of work. And it gives you an idea of what they do. And you could think, oh, yeah, this is really cool. This is really interesting. Or you might have the opposite. Oh, I don't want to do this. This isn't for me. Right. But you don't know until you put yourself out there. And that's totally fine. I mean,
yes, it's
finding
fine.
out what you don't like is just as good as finding out what you do like, because it's going to get you closer to finding what you do like.
Exactly. It is absolutely normal to be like, for years, you're like, this is what I want to do. And then the minute you get there, you're like, nope. Believe me, that's totally normal. But yeah, regardless of where you guys live, you might not live near the ocean. So if you do have questions about where you might want to go and volunteer, please reach out. If I get some locations, I will put out my feelers. I will ask people, but definitely check out your local Fish and Wildlife, National Park Service, your Bureau of Land Management, who else? U.S. Forest Service, your NOAA agencies, both with weather and with your waterways there. All of those are usually somewhere in your area, and I bet you that they have offices where you guys can start volunteering. It might be something just where you're doing a little bit of office work to start, but if you could start seeing what the biologists are doing, that might give you an idea of where you might want to go and volunteer later on. So all of those places are great. And things like the National Park Service, guys, they have parks all over the country,
everywhere,
including like the Virgin Islands and things like that.
Yep.
So
here, another one is the National Marine Sanctuary office. So just like the national park where they protect areas throughout the U.S., the National Marine Sanctuary System does the same thing, but protects underwater environments. So that's another one that you may have in your state as well. And then one other thing to add, one really cool thing too about being a research scientist, marine biologist, is that if you want to, you get to travel a lot to really cool places. I always wanted to travel, but I never could afford it. And so I did it through my career throughout the years. I got to travel around the Caribbean, and now I'm going through the South Pacific because I'm going with work. I'm not doing it on my own time, which I do as well, but it is something. But if you don't like to travel and you don't want to do that, you can do plenty of other things too, staying in one location. So it's what you make it. And if you want to travel and do more exploring per se in all these remote places, but if you want to just stay in one locality, you can do that too. You can work at a university that's, at one location, or an aquarium or things like that. So don't turn away because there's one thing you don't like, say in a field that you're interested in. Because there's one thing you don't like, that doesn't mean that's the end of it, right? For that idea or that thought of where you want to go in your career. So keep your options open. It's better to have options than no options.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time today,
Yeah,
guys.
thanks for having me. It's been great.
This has been a blast. Guys, I hope you have enjoyed this. Again, keep sticking back for more of these interviews. They're going to be every Tuesday right here on the Facebook page and again, our YouTube channel. So go ahead and subscribe to that if you guys want to go and check that out, because that will list all of them. So go through. We tend to list them. So if you're going through these interviews and you're starting to go and figure out where those interests are going, chances are there's going to be an interview that might go and kind of focus that a little bit more. But if not, ask me. I will find somebody in the wide world to come and answer your questions, because in the words of the amazing Ali Ward, ask smart people dumb questions, and that's how you learn things. And I couldn't have said it better myself. So thank you so much. Want to go ahead and give one more bye to everybody?
See you all. Enjoy. Best of luck.
And hopefully you'll get some amazing researchers working next to you in the future.
Yes.
All right. Well, yeah, exactly. It's good. I can't wait to have you guys working next to us. We'll catch you next time. Bye, everyone.